1 through 11. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. And when the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have gotten drunk. But you've kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. May God bless the reading of the gospel. Opening the driver's door in the pre-dawn darkness, I set my suitcase on the front passenger seat. Reaching into the back seats, I disentangled the seatbelt straps and released the catches so that the back seats flipped forward, so the car's interior became one large cargo area. There on the curb, my accomplices appeared, carrying crate after crate of liquor, ready for loading. Countless bottles of red and white wines, the ingredients for old fashions and Moscow mules, along with several varieties of craft beers. Soon were all stacked by the lift gate. It was one big boozy puzzle for me to solve as I wondered if a Prius could really hold all of this. And what if I got in an accident as I was driving back to Illinois from Florida? How would I explain my cargo? Well, the beverages did fit, tightly enough that there was very little clanging of the bottles, and as the sky pinked up with the first signs of morning, my daughter carried her wedding dress out of her apartment, and we carefully laid it over the top of their reception refreshments. "Drive carefully, Mom. I'd really like this dress to stay white." Well, the explanation for my intoxicating cargo was simple enough. My now son-in-law is a sommelier and a salesman for a large liquor distributor in the Southeast. Soon after he became engaged to my daughter and they set the date, his clients and the store managers that he saw week after week kept congratulating him with gifts for the wedding reception. And since they were being married at my farm here in Illinois, I was charged with transporting the bounty across state lines, an abundance of liquid gladness for their wedding feast. And I've got to say, I felt like a bootlegger during Prohibition days. That whole long day driving cross country, looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone was going to challenge me over possession of so many gallons of wine. I grew up, maybe you did too, with a vague sense that alcohol was somehow unholy, though our refrigerator was always well stocked with beer and my dad enjoyed a nightly scotch. When I began reading the Bible for myself, I was genuinely shocked at the frequency of references to wine and intoxicating strong drink, most of the references positive. While drunkenness is certainly advised against, wine is an ever-present symbol in biblical narratives, and not just a symbol, a feature of the story again and again. In the most practical sense, it's a fortified fruit beverage which has been rendered safe from contamination by its alcohol content. an important dietary staple in the ancient world. In the most poetic way, wine is a symbol of gladness and celebration, high spirits. Scripture doesn't deny or even censure its intoxicating properties, but places those properties solidly in the context of community rejoicing. Every good host provided wine aplenty for their guests. By contrast, when Noah goes off by himself and gets drunk in his tent to the point of passing out, he brings shame upon his entire family. Not at all the purpose of wine in the world. For the gospel writer John, running out of wine at the wedding feast is more than an embarrassing moment for the host. It's symbolic of a blessing which is denied the bride and groom and all of the community which have gathered to celebrate their union. Wine is a sign of harvest, abundance, joy, and genuine hospitality. To run short on wine is to run short on blessing, a catastrophe that Mary, the mother of Jesus, notices first. Interestingly, this is one of only 2 times that John mentions Mary in his gospel. The other is at the end of his ministry when he's dying on the cross. And in that scene, the wine present is sour wine vinegar soaked into a rag and put on a stick and offered to a dying, tortured man. You see, John's gospel contains no nativity scene, no Christmas stories, no angel visitants, no background on his earthly family. In his whole gospel, John provides only 2 scenes with Mary. Here, prodding Jesus to unleash the signs of abundance and joy that are his to give to the gathered community. And there at the cross, bearing silent witness to the appalling deprivation of such blessings, in the throes of institutionalized violence endemic to oppressive governments. Mary appears at a celebration of love and community and family, and Mary appears at a scene of horror as torture is valorized at the hands of the state. Sweet wine, sour wine. The question of the Messiah's identity is tied to both at the beginning and the end of his ministry. The wine. It harkens back to the prophets Joel and Amos, who declared about a coming Messiah, a golden age. When the Lord's anointed one comes, they said, there will be an abundance of wine. The mountains will drip with sweet wine. Not many verses after this wedding miracle, John will tell another story of abundance, the multiplication of loaves and fishes. And once again, in the context of gathered community, Jesus will respond to the immediate, the daily, the pressing needs of people. At the wedding, 6 large jars of wine, about 180 gallons, are his wedding gift to the couple. It's already the 3rd day of the wedding celebration. It seems to me, as a mother of the bride, 1 would have been more than enough. Encourage those guests to start heading home. But Jesus extends the celebration with more than enough. And in the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes too, there is more than enough, plenty left over after everyone has received their fill. In the Hebrew faith, overflowing grain and oil are prophetic signs of the golden age, when all God's children will be well fed and the community will reside together in peace and in security. The miracle at the wedding feast in Cana is a clear sign God's promises are being fulfilled. With the appearance of Jesus, the Messiah, the golden age is upon us. From the perspective of our own current worldview, we miss important elements of this miracle and this story. because we've been raised in an individualistic and consumerist culture which thinks of food and drink, comfort and ease, pleasure and safety and security as private more than communal goals. We eat made-to-order, individually prepared meals more often than we sup from a common bowl or platter. We drink alone in the privacy of our recliners. We pay our own way. We pick up our own check. But the biblical world is much different. Families and tribes and villagers interdependent, so that the common experience was reclining at table with others, sharing from the same plates and having long conversations in the evening glow, not hurriedly eating alone. Even as an itinerant rabbi like Jesus, he traveled with an extended family of disciples, the supporting women and his brothers. Table fellowship was daily. The richness of a feast was a communal good and a communal goal, not a private accomplishment. By contrast, when we think of striking it rich, we think of wealth accruing to an individual who then has a right to make personal and private decisions about what she or he wants to do with it. But when our ancestors in faith speak of abundance, their basic assumption is that well-being is a communal gain. Blessings happen to groups of people. Solitary individuals in Scripture are usually people caught in horrible circumstances. Joseph, thrown in a pit. Jacob, fleeing Esau's wrath. Moses on the run when he encounters Jethro's tent. The woman at the well, an outcast from her community. Aloneness equals deprivation. Abundant life only happens in community. So acknowledging a communal orientation, we have to ask about this gospel reading. Why did the blessing run out at a wedding feast? Was it solely the responsibility of the hosts to provide everything that was needed? Had they failed to do their duty to the community? Maybe not. It was ancient custom for wedding guests to bring gifts of food and drink. Perhaps the hosts were unable to provide enough because of a lack of their own resources. Perhaps the guests were unable to share generously from their provisions due to their own limited resources. Was there intentional stinginess on anyone's part? There is no way of telling. But what is clear is a crisis of support arose, which cried out for someone to provide what they could. And Jesus does. But not with just enough to get by. The Messiah's presence at the communal feast releases an overflowing river of the best wine this party has tasted yet. Mary is the character in this story who really captures my imagination. I don't see her with an empty goblet in her hand demanding that Jesus give her another refill. I see her as a bustling servant in the background of the festive day, much like the adoring aunts at my own daughter's wedding, who quietly set to work behind the scenes, keeping everything running smoothly. They're concerned that there be enough of everything, manifested itself in decisions to go through the buffet last, and if needed to forego whatever might be running out at the time. It was evident in their willingness to run to the store for more ice or flowers for the tables or flashlight batteries. It was obvious in their greater attention to how others were faring than their own ease and comfort at the feast. And as it turned out, well, not surprisingly, we had more than enough food and definitely more than enough drink at my daughter's wedding. The bride and groom were richly blessed. Family and friends celebrated and rejoiced well into the night. And I confess I'm glad that Jesus of Nazareth wasn't there, because I could not have survived another 180 gallons of wine extending the party. Abundance isn't a number. Whether we're counting gallons of wine or bushels of wheat or liters of olive oil, abundance is a spirit of communal generosity that does not run out. And this is the miracle of Cana. It is renewable and sustainable when we align our values with those of the Messiah, who poured himself out for us so that we might pour ourselves out for one another. And speaking of pouring out, I still have dozens of unopened bottles at my house, just waiting to be uncorked with friends. So if you're willing to brave the roads, come and see me. Here at this table, we talk about an abundance of wine and bread, even as we serve a tiny little morsel of bread and a tiny little bit of the fruit of the vine. But the abundance that is present here is what you started the service recognizing. The abundance of love in this place, no matter what the attendance number is on a cold day. It is here at this table that we are reminded of the Messiah we celebrate. Love is poured out freely, graciously, abundantly. Come and share in the bread and cup.